All right, I think we should be ready.
Great.
All right. So, Lisa Pierce, present. Joshua Samin is currently not here. Sunali, oh, sorry, Kenna?
He's not coming this week.
He's not going to be here. Got it. Sonali Second. Sonali?
Here.
All right, I see her, so we'll mark her as present. All right, Dina Allen. Yep, there you are. Woody Hastings.
Here.
And I got your message about leaving early today, so thank you for the heads up.
Yeah. Thanks. Yeah, I'm probably gonna be gone from like 4 to 4:15, and then I'm hoping to be able to come back. Just so folks know.
Sounds good. Thank you. Kenna Lee.
Here.
Alex Goodman.
Here.
Sarah Elliott. Sarah Elliott, are you here? There we go. All right. Jerry Glazer.
I'm here.
Anna Rich.
Yes.
All right. Sarah Glade Gurney.
I'm here.
Luke Lindenbush.
Here.
All right. So we're just missing Joshua at this time, and he is not going to be here. Perfect.
Nolly agreed to share an inspiration with us this week.
Hi, folks. This is from somebody I know who sent over a poem yesterday, and I thought I'd share that. So it's called A Beginning. The leafy tapestry that live oaks scatter across the ground makes bare feet step softly and gives the air a golden canyon light. Here in California, I lean back and soak up sunset heat, listening to the birds' shattering squeaks. Thoughts of news are far away. Here it seems we are actually doing something. Teaching ourselves ancient stories so native wisdom won't be lost in night. And watch out for the traps the corporations have set. We are mourning what has been lost, proud of what we have managed to carry away. I am learning bird song slowly. I'm learning what leaves to eat, when to argue, how to fight. I'm learning to see the well-tended earth right in front of me and how to let compost happen while ignoring the far from distant city streets. The cars make their sounds and the birds theirs. As of now, winds and storms have washed California clean. It doesn't hurt to listen to the silence between cloud crashes, of passing traffic, and just breathe. This is a beginning, and that is precisely what we need.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing that to us. All right, so Luke, do you have the action items from last time, or?
I do not.
I'm realizing that I sat here getting ready for the meeting and failed to get the action items pulled up. So I'm gonna pull those up shortly. And I think in the meantime, I'll move on to the comments from the public regarding items not on the agenda. Does anyone have any comments regarding items not on the agenda?
And I would also like to report back that we have not received any written comments since the last meeting.
Perfect. Okay, so I now have the action items pulled up here. So from last week, we just said all working groups were going to meet in the interim between last meeting and this meeting and prepare a report back. Alan was going to start setting up a shared document library for us and would do the forwarding of documents as needed to specific committees. And Diana was making her Zoom account available to working groups that needed it. All right, so do we have any statements of conflict of interest from any members of the committee regarding anything on our agenda today? Sarah is allergic to our agenda today. Other than that, all right, so we will move on to our regular agenda items. And I'm a little bit confused now. Woody, did you need to go first or not need to go first?
Yeah, I mean, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be able to come back in after I take care of what I need to take care of. So I think if you're going to get to me after about 4:15, it should be fine.
Okay. All right, then we will move right on to item number 1, the presentation on the history of the RCPA by Tanya. And thank you again for coming, and I'll just hand the floor over to you.
Great, thank you so much. So if I could have a PowerPoint that I would like to share, if I could.
Okay. Tanya, I just made you a co-host, so you should be able to share your screen now.
Great, thank you. There it is. Alrighty, so before I begin, I just want to thank all of you for your service on, I think this is a relatively new committee for the city of Sebastopol, but we at the RCPA are really excited to see you coming together and look forward to partnering with you more in the future, and of course with city staff and Director Gurney, one of our board members. So just really excited that you all are committing this time and energy to this very important topic. So what I will share today is some history of the RCPA and also a little bit of information in terms of what we're currently working on and kind of where we're headed in the near future, and certainly welcome any questions or comments that you have as I go along. So first, in terms of the history, I thought I would put this in the context of some climate action milestones in Sonoma County. And when I was looking back over this, I was just realizing how much work has been done over time. And I am sure that I'm missing some milestones as well. So please forgive me if there's something that you think should be on here that I don't have on here, but try to hit some of the high points. So way back in 2001, the cities in Sonoma County made a commitment to the Cities for Climate Protection campaign, which was part of the ICLEI, International Communities for Local Environmental Action, I believe, or Local Environmental Initiatives, I believe it stands for. And then in 2005, there was a big effort to get all of the cities in the county to adopt a GHG emissions reduction target of 25% below 1990 levels by 2015. And the city of Cotati actually adopted a more aggressive target of 30% by 2015. And then in 2008, the Community Climate Action Plan was developed by the Climate Protection Campaign, which is now the Climate Center. And then in 2009, the RCPA was established as the nation's first local government agency that was created specifically to address climate change. And I'll say a little bit more about the structure in a moment. And then we had some actions taken by the city of Santa Rosa to develop its climate action plan. We received recognition, we being the county, as a climate action champion in 2014. And the RCPA, in collaboration with the North Bay Climate Adaptation Initiative, published a report titled Climate Ready Sonoma County that outlined climate hazards and vulnerabilities, which is still applicable today, although I think we could say the hazards and vulnerabilities have only increased over time and since that report was published. And then in 2016, the RCPA worked with a community-wide effort, both with our local jurisdictions as well as community groups and members of the community, to create and publish the Climate Action 2020 and Beyond plan that contained a series of measures that local governments committed to undertake to achieve the climate goals that we had set. And then follow up to that, in 2017, 2018, we published another plan that was focused on transportation. And this was really intended to take some of the measures that were outlined in the 2020 plan and be more specific in terms of implementation plans. And then in 2019, we saw a real kind of resurgence due to really a lot of community support and encouragement for our local jurisdictions, starting with the city of Petaluma, to adopt climate emergency resolutions to really indicate our commitment to moving faster and more aggressively to address the climate change impacts and the issues that we needed to address. And so along the way, our board also adopted a climate emergency resolution in September of 2019, and several other local jurisdictions took similar actions that year and following up in 2020. So by the end of 2020, we had 9 of the 10 jurisdictions had adopted these climate emergency resolutions. And along the way, our board also, as part of our resolution, directed staff to develop what was initially called the 2030 Climate Emergency Mobilization Strategy, which we've since shortened to the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy. So we've been working on that since mid-2020. And then most recently, and very exciting for the city of Sebastopol, being the first city or jurisdiction in Sonoma County to sign on to a new program that we're rolling out called Water Upgrade Save. And this is an on-bill financing tool to enable residents to install water and energy saving upgrades in their homes and have that paid off over time on their utility bill and actually save money while they're doing so. So it's a great program, and really excited that Sebastopol is being our pilot early adopter. And then just this last Monday, our climate mobilization strategy was adopted by our board. And I heard that last night, the city of Rohnert Park adopted a climate emergency resolution. So lots going on related to climate across the county. So looking at Rcpa a little bit more in terms of kind of how we're organized in our governance structure, the Rcpa is really a regional organization that is, our goal is to help coordinate and collaborate across the county, as well as connect us to the broader Bay Area region, as well as the state and the national level. So, for example, in the Bay Area, we are the county representative for the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, and the Water Upgrade Save program is something that we're leading as part of that network. But we also participate in a number of other energy saving programs through BayREN. And then at the state level, we are monitoring legislation and will help advocate for changes in legislation to support climate action and climate policy, as well as looking to the federal level. Really hopeful now with the change in administration that we'll start to see some more funding coming locally to support our climate efforts. And so we're a key, player in that landscape, and really we're here to support the city of Sebastopol and our other member jurisdictions in advancing your climate goals as well. So just a brief look at our staff. We are a small but hopefully mighty team and hope to grow over time depending on the funding that we're able to secure. So we're part of the SCTA Rcpa organization with our executive director, Suzanne Smith. I'm the director of climate programs. And then we have Chris Cohn, who you probably will be hearing more from since she's the manager of the Water Upgrade Save program. We have a relatively new climate change program analyst, BC Katz, who came to us from the county of Sonoma and is going to be focusing on the mobilization strategy and implementation. And then the two staff with the red circles around them indicate that we have only part-time. So Brant splits his time between the Rcpa and SCTA, and then we have a data specialist position that's currently vacant that would also support Rcpa and SCTA. So we, about a year and a half ago, developed a new strategic plan and put out a new mission and vision for the Rcpa. So you can see in our mission that we're really all about leading and facilitating local government action across the county, and that we envision a future where we're all united in taking bold action to fight the climate crisis. And I've got a couple of definitions of what we mean by a coalition down below in the italic text. So in terms of our role, I talked a little bit about this, but really we see ourselves playing a role of supporting our local jurisdictions in helping to identify ways that regional action could help support local priorities related to climate action and resilience. So looking at issues around obviously transportation, infrastructure, housing affordability and access, making sure that the programs we're advancing are supporting the goals that you have and not, to the best of our ability, acting in opposition to those. Looking for regional scale policies and solutions and ways that we can, for example, come up with a template or a model policy that could then be rolled out and shared with all of the jurisdictions. We also produce the greenhouse gas inventory for the county, and we released the last update to that in the summer of 2020, and it was for the calendar year 2018. So we gather the data and crunch the numbers to produce that inventory, and we'll be start working on the 2020 inventory here in about maybe within the next year. We have to put our plans together for that. But that's a service that we provide to the county. And we'd actually like to do more work around data and providing metrics and information to the different jurisdictions to be able to track and monitor our progress. And then finally, coordinating across the region so that we're not duplicating efforts. You know, if we see a great idea, like for example, the city of Petaluma just passed a ban on gas stations. So, you know, we might be able to help support sharing what Petaluma has done and what they've learned through their process with other jurisdictions who might want to replicate that. So to help facilitate that knowledge sharing. And then probably, maybe not most important, but the topic of funding often comes up when we look at all of these plans that we're putting together. They do require resources, both within, excuse me, local government as well as the community. And so finding sources of, you know, new grant funding, you know, other sources of funding that will help support our efforts here locally. And then in terms of our major initiatives, these came out of our strategic plan. Won't be probably too surprising to all of you in terms of the areas that we're focusing on. So there's decarbonization with a focus on our buildings and our transportation. And I'll talk in a minute about our new mobilization strategy, which you'll see aligns with these initiative areas as well. And then carbon sequestration, we see as a real opportunity and a need in the county to help us achieve our goals for the future. And then resilience, you know, obviously with all of the climate impacts that we're already seeing, we need to continue our focus on resilience and finding ways to support energy and water independence. And so our Water Upgrade Save program would be an example of that. Let's see. Alrighty, so now I'd like to kind of finish my presentation with a few slides about our new Sonoma Climate Mobilization, which I mentioned was just adopted by our board on Monday. And I've already kind of talked through this milestone. These hopefully look familiar from the timeline that I shared earlier. But just to say, all of these efforts are really leading up to what we've put together for the Sonoma Climate Mobilization Strategy. And the goal in this strategy is to help Sonoma County achieve a target or a goal of carbon neutral by 2030. And most of our, well, I shouldn't say most, but many of the jurisdictions who adopted climate emergency resolutions have a similar goal of this carbon neutral by 2030. So we're really trying to support them as well. And this is one picture of what the reductions would need to look like to achieve that goal. And I say that because we now that we have the strategy adopted, we will begin working on implementation plans and really diving into the data and the numbers to figure out, you know, how are we going to achieve that goal in the reductions in different areas. And this simply models an 80% reduction in each of the sectors. So not surprising, our transportation sector is the biggest source of emissions in Sonoma County, followed by building energy, and then ag, so fertilizer and livestock, solid waste, and water and wastewater. And one model for achieving that 2030 goal would be to reduce those sectors by 80% and then have an equivalent amount of sequestration, so pulling carbon out of the air to offset those remaining emissions. We don't see a way at this point in time, at least based on what we know, to get to zero emissions by 2030. But, you know, anything, I mean, things are going to change over the coming years, and, you know, new solutions are going to come along that we maybe can't imagine now, but still 2030 is not that far away. And so we do feel that sequestration will be a critical piece of achieving the goal that we've set. And so this is a high-level overview of the strategies, and I've included the link, and I will send a copy of these slides to you as well. But here's a link to our website where we have the latest version of the strategy and some other information out there for you, so you can read more details about each of these strategies. And in the slide deck at the kind of appendix, I have a more detailed listing of what falls within each of these strategies. So we have the decarbonization, which we've broken into building energy, transportation, and solid waste. You know, these aren't necessarily new ideas, but we have to figure out how to accelerate the progress that we're making in each of these areas. And so you see we have a focus in our buildings on moving to all electric for both existing and new buildings, and then continuing to clean up the source of our electricity to become carbon free. And then in transportation, we have a focus on both reducing driving, so reducing BMT with the Drive Less Sonoma County campaign, which includes strategies related to transit, bicycle and pedestrian access or use. And then EV Access for All is really focused on electrifying our fleet of vehicles of all makes and sizes. So from, individual cars to trucks and buses, and then also looking to support the deployment of more, smaller, lightweight modes of transportation like e-bikes, for example. The Vehicle Miles Traveled Bank is a funding mechanism that we want to explore as a way to support the investments needed, especially around our bike ped infrastructure, which we know requires a tremendous amount of investment to encourage folks to leave their cars behind and do more biking and walking. And then zero waste by 2030 is exactly what it sounds like, basically eliminating the waste that we're sending to our landfill. And then we have strategies focused on sequestration, so protecting what we already have stored in our plants and soils, increasing that sequestration through practices like carbon farming, and then really scaling up the infrastructure. We need to, develop the workforce and the materials like the plants and the composting that would be needed to support that increased sequestration. And then resilience and adaptation. Energy Grid for the Future is focused on supporting the development of microgrids to, enable our key community centers, vulnerable communities to be more resilient in the face of power outages. And then Climate Resilient Sonoma County is continuing to do the work that's already been started around adaptation, and becoming more resilient to the impacts of wildfires, drought, et cetera. And then the last set of strategies are really the foundational strategies overall. So we know that in order to achieve these goals, we need to do much more community education and engagement so that everyone feels like they know how to be part of the solution. And then also a big focus on equity in our strategy, recognizing that as we're developing these policies, we need to be thinking about our entire community and how we can best address those needs overall. So let's see, that is the high level view. And then in our presentation to our board this Monday, we propose that we begin with a focus on a shorter list of strategies and objectives, because when you read through the whole document, there's a whole lot in there, and we don't have the resources and the funding right now to start on all of them. And so we propose to start with this initial set of objectives within the different strategies, really trying to leverage work that's already going on and the staffing that we have, as well as what we hear from our local jurisdictions in terms of the areas that they want to work and be supported in. So I think that's my last slide, just in terms of our next steps at a very high level to implement the mobilization strategy. The rest of 2021 will be focused on those priorities that I just shared with you, starting to look for additional sources of funding and beginning this outreach and engagement campaign. And then, from 2022 on, we're going to continue to, need to secure that funding. We want to create a monitoring process and tools so we can track our progress and then adjust as we go along, recognizing that we are going to learn new things, and new solutions will come along that will want to be nimble and be able to integrate into our plans. So that brings me to the end of my presentation, and I welcome any questions or comments that you have.
Through the chair, may I just add a few things? Ken, is that okay?
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Tanya, for starters. This history is remarkable for Sonoma County when you think back to 2009, that we were the first governmental agency to deal with climate. And going from 2009 forward, I think is really important for this new group to focus on the initiatives, particularly page 11 and 12 in your slide deck there, as to where the regional effort is right now. For me, I think my important message today is for all of us on the committee to understand. We literally have Tanya and the Rcpa at our fingertips. They are our governmental professionals who can support us in this work. Alan is there for us as our staff, and our staff can't do all the work that the regional group can do for us in terms of providing context for almost any subject we want to dive into. So I think it's really important, Tanya, that we start leaning on you for some help. And I encourage folks to do that. That was one of the reasons I wanted to introduce you today, just selfishly twice over. I knew you would do a better job with this long history, but also to make sure that our Sebastopol people knew there was this effort centered right in Santa Rosa, collecting all of the cities and counties' efforts and making it all coordinated so that we have a greater impact, so that we can use each other's experiences. And I think that's going to let us move forward more effectively and more efficiently. And this is a very action-oriented group. So I wanted to make sure you had a name and a face to the RCPA. You've got Tanya, you saw the organizational chart. There are people who can help us in all our efforts beyond Alan and our city staff. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I see Woody has his hand raised.
I do. Am I up? Thank you. So yeah, thanks for the presentation, Tanya. My question is, I do remember when I had just come to the county when the RCPA was formed, 2009. And I remember thinking, what a great thing, what a cool thing. And wow, it's going to happen. It's happening here in Sonoma County, and it's going to catch on. And we're going to see other counties setting up their own county level, greenhouse gas coordinating group. And it hasn't happened 12 years, and it's still the only one in California. And so I'm wondering, do you ever get phone calls from other counties saying, gee, you guys, how do we do that? Do you ever talk to them? Is there any effort to try to amplify and expand and replicate the RCPA to other counties?
So I don't have too much knowledge of this because I'm fairly new in my role, but I do know that I think it was maybe 6 months ago, Napa reached out to us, and Suzanne, our executive director, actually went and made a presentation they have I can't remember if it was their council or they may have a climate subcommittee of their council. And anyway, she presented the history of the RCPA, and there was some discussion about, what kind of organization or structure Napa might create, but I don't know what's happened since then. I also know through the Bay Area Regional Energy Network, there's conversations about, we share notes. And so there's other reps from counties who look at what we're doing here and are trying to learn from what we're doing. But I haven't actually gone out and tried to share this information more broadly. So yet.
Denali, go ahead.
Hi, thank you for that presentation. I'm wondering if we can get a copy of that slideshow.
Yes, absolutely.
And also the goals that were outlined in the 2015 plan. I'm just curious how we met them, and if not, what obstacles.
Yes, great question. So I will definitely should I send the slides to Alan? Would that be the best? So I will do that. And so the goals that we set in the 2020 plan were to be 25% below 1990 levels by 2020, 40% below by 2030, and 80% below by 2050. So we haven't done the 2020 inventory yet, but as of 2019, the 2018 inventory, if I'm remembering my numbers right, we're about 13% below. So you can probably do the math and imagine that we're not likely to have met our 2020 target. Even with COVID, because we know with COVID, we saw, for example, a big reduction in vehicle miles traveled. That's come back up again. So I've read, estimates of like a 6% reduction due to COVID, but that's still not going to get us to where we need to be. So we actually have a pretty steep drop that we need to make. And I do need to give credit to Sonoma Clean Power, the CCA, which came out of the climate action plan that the Climate Protection Campaign, now the Climate Center, published many years ago. That's really been a big contributor to that 13% reduction. But now we have the harder things to do, like the transportation sector is such a large percentage of our emissions. It's a big challenge because it means, basically reducing our driving, and we're very car dependent in Sonoma County in part because of our land use. We're so spread out, and we don't have a good transit alternative for folks to use. And in the bike ped space, people don't feel safe necessarily getting out of their bikes. So there's a lot of things that we need to do to reduce those emissions.
Go ahead, Lisa.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mouse.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tanya, for that. So I'm just so struck by 9 years is what we've got for these very dramatic reductions. And, goals are just kind of a wish list without substantial funding. I think all these things that are outlined, I read the report, and so many ambitious goals, but I only saw kind of just little snippets of, you know, hopes for private partnerships, sales tax, federal funding. And I'm just wondering if there's anything that you're aware of that, any funding sources that we might be able to have some more hope for, because at this point, it's like, how is this all going to happen without what we need to make it happen? So yeah, that's my
So
question.
I don't have any specifics that I can point you to at this moment in time, but I do feel that there is a real a change. You know, certainly at the federal level, we see, you know, climate is now a priority again. So I have to believe, and maybe this is partly that I tend to be an optimist at heart, but that we are going to start seeing more funding directed towards climate. And part of our reason for wanting to put this strategy together, even though we don't have all the details figured out, to have something that as these funding opportunities come along, we can point to our strategy and say, hey, here, you know, we need to do this bike ped program, or we have these EV programs underway, and this is what we need the funding for. So to have that framework as we see those opportunities come along, and to also help us seek out funding opportunities from both the state and federal level. So you're right, it's a big challenge, and we don't have all the answers right now. But
And for Lisa, I want to report on the board discussion at the RCPA board. We're talking about a potential ballot measure 2022. So as a local self-help county, we're helping ourselves, assuming it would pass, to work on climate.
yeah, and I should also add that we have the Go Sonoma measure that was just passed that is putting much more money towards bike ped and transit than the previous sales tax measure for transportation. So that's you know, win as well, and really support the efforts that we need to undertake there.
Thanks.
Tanya?
Yes.
Oh, go ahead. Zeno, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, sorry, so I'm public. I don't know whether I can jump in here, but yeah, I feel that there's no sense of emergency yet. As soon as we get pushback from the population, we know we're doing something, because this transformation is enormous. And so working with this program and that funding, I'm skeptical that this will be enough. So the question for me is, how are we going to energize the population? I feel up to now we have really worked with governance. Right, we have city council passing, doing plans. But people, they've continued their lifestyle as they have for the last 20, 50, 100 years, right? So I don't see that we have created the franticness, the war effort atmosphere that a transformation like this is asking for. And as an indication of that, I mentioned that we haven't really done that until we see people pushing back, getting angry, disagreeing. Because everything that we have been doing up to now is like promoting, guiding, and most people are not even aware of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, I had a question about the Sebastopol portion of the RCPA plan, which is our CAP, or kind of what we're using as our existing climate action plan. And the way, like, do you have any insight that you could share with us about how that portion of the plan was developed? Because that, you know, we're now looking at revising and refining and hopefully making that into a much more ambitious climate action plan. But the way it's currently written is kind of West County, and we are a city appointed committee which has jurisdiction over city limits. So I don't know if you have any advice for us or any kind of history to share about how it was written the way it was, or, you know, how we should move forward with balancing those aspects out.
And when you refer to the Sebastopol plan, is that the plan that was done as part of the Climate Action 2020 and Beyond plan?
Yes.
Yeah, so I wasn't
Section 5.7.
yeah, part of that initiative, and I don't know, maybe
No.
Sarah has some thoughts on that, but I guess
I do.
Oh, sorry, go ahead, Sarah.
Oh, as far as I know, remembering, I looked into this because several different people in this committee asked me this question. I believe our part was drafted by the planning director at the time, Kenyon Webster.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe other cities went through their planning department in that same way. Maybe it was a planner group activity for all the Sonoma County planners. I'm not sure of other cities. And then it was forwarded to the council for public review and discussion. That's what I remember. I haven't verified that in the city files though.
Yeah, and I guess one thought that I would share in terms of kind of your next steps, I would really encourage you to, look at certainly what's been the existing plan, and critique it in terms of what you think could be stronger about it, and then also look at how you can, what we can learn, or how you could help implement the mobilization strategy, and how you see the work that you'd like to have done in Sebastopol, whether it's with your buildings or your transportation system, and how the work we're doing at the Rcpa can support you in strengthening those measures. Because we're definitely going to need support and participation from all of the communities around things like how do we retrofit all of our existing buildings, and what are incentives and ordinances and regulations that we can implement to make that transformation, because it really is a tremendous challenge on the building side. And then of course there's the transportation system that also needs to be completely transformed.
Go ahead, Sonali.
Tanya, I'm curious what your success, like where the success has been with education and sequestration. Those are two subcommittees that I'm a part of.
So we've just put the strategy together, and so we haven't started doing a lot of outreach and education yet around sequestration. We did in the working group that we pulled together to work on that. The group's feedback was they saw sequestration, especially in an urban space, as a way to raise community awareness, get people involved in a very tangible way that might be more effective than talking about building energy or transportation, but that when you start, talking and educating people about things they can do in their own backyards or front yards, that's a way to kind of make things more tangible and real. But we haven't actually started doing any outreach yet.
Do you have anything organized around that sequestration part for individuals?
Not yet, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead, Diana.
As I look at this issue, obviously, many layers and complicated, but I'm just curious about whether Rcpa has done or intends to do any inquiry into sequestration, meaning not planting of trees, but more creative sequestration options that might be more technology driven. And I don't pretend to have looked deeply into these issues, but I know that we do have a subcommittee that is making those inquiries. And I know that there's been some discussion, some dialogue around actually capturing, sequestering, carbon, kind of like you do waste products. Is that something that Rcpa has as an issue that might be researched or might be a part of the inquiry?
Yeah, we haven't done any research on that yet. The group that we worked with to put the strategy together was really focused more on natural methods. So utilizing our, open space, working lands, urban spaces to sequester carbon through practices like planting hedgerows and compost and, all those kinds of practices. I am aware of the more technical solutions, and I know that there are different schools of thought around whether or not we should be pursuing those. I feel like where we're at with the climate and the magnitude of the challenge in front of us, we can't not investigate those solutions. So it's something that we've talked about, but we don't have an active effort. But that might be something on a regional-wide basis with our role plugged into some of the other, broader organizations that we could help with. But it's not part of our current strategy.
Yeah, it's just I look at the graphs and the 9-year timeline that Lisa was mentioning. I think, well, I don't think that we can plant enough trees to really meet that graph that had all that sequestration going down there. So yeah, it's good to know that because that seems like it might be a real regional effort. Might require regional effort. Thank you.
Or state. Yeah, it's a big.
Yeah, or bigger.
So I'm hoping that we can start to phase out this portion of the meeting. Tanya, I'm so grateful that you came. Zena, was there something else that you were wanting to ask Tanya in particular?
Maybe not Zeno, but I do have one last remark I'd like to make. It's Sarah. All right. And I will end with this. I think it's really important to consider Woody's comment that it's been, 11 years, 12 years, and not really anything's been done. Another comment that other counties aren't replicating this effort. And when I feel like that, I think it's really good to see what is on the ground, those actions that have taken place. This is where I get to the details of City Hall and the library, converting its front yard to permaculture, to rain barrels capturing the water, as well as the private yards that have been committed. We've really changed our numbers on water conservation. We have the highest level of solarization of rooftops and properties, both private and commercial, and agencies like our school district. We have 18 new smart crosswalks to encourage people to walk around town. And we've had a walks committee going since the year 2008. We also have the first free shuttle bus, the free public transportation, which is a real game changer, which other cities have taken on, which has now launched into this whole future of public transit conversation. Like, can we make the whole system consolidated and make it all free, subsidized to get everyone in their car? So let's keep our eyes on what we have done and how we can deepen those individual actions to get more effect.
Thank you.
I think I'm an optimist too.
Yeah, great. Because there has been a lot of good work done. Yes, important to acknowledge for sure.
Yeah, Luke?
Yeah, thank you so much, Tanya, for presenting. And I really just appreciate all of us understanding how unique the RCPA is. And I think one of the large benefits of it, encapsulated well by that graph of kind of being the intermediary between the cities and the state and the country, and making sure that we can be innovative. And I think we think a lot too about how we can replicate what we've done well, and have that go well beyond our borders, but also look at other ideas and bring them to us as well. So my question for you is there anything within the purview of the RCPA that has sort of a uniquely municipal bent to it that really only cities or maybe is best accomplished by cities?
In terms of specific programs, you mean, or?
I guess just in terms of just reaching our 2030 goals, is there anything that that you've experienced that really kind of on the city level is best done on the city level, or something that, because I think we're sort of at a point where we're looking at what we can prioritize. So if there's anything that really jumps out, that would be helpful.
Yeah, so I mean, one example that we've supported, like the city of Santa Rosa on, is the what they call the REACH codes. And so the city of Santa Rosa and Windsor, and now Petaluma, is considering implementing an all-electric ordinance for new construction. And so that's an example of something that has to be done city by city, but we can support you in that by putting together model templates, which we do have for the all-electric piece. Similarly, looking at the existing building challenge and recognizing that we definitely want to look for incentives and rebates and ways to encourage voluntary retrofits, but at some point we probably are going to have to require that to be done in some way and through some method, and that's something that a city or a county would have the purview and the responsibility to do. So those are a couple of examples. And then of course the whole infrastructure, so building out our bike ped infrastructure, investments, planning for that is a key role that the city would play.
Plus, at the board meetings, all the cities can share what they're doing. That's a great thing about having a regional board. So for instance, I keep pressing, this is what we're doing about walking. This is what we're doing about transit. I know Tanya's nodding her head.
Oh, I
'cause she
love
knows.
it.
Okay.
It always inspires me. So thank you.
Well, and it's also Petaluma did the no new gas stations. Every city can adopt that, and the county has moved the needle right there if we share and use other cities' work.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Tanya, before we say goodbye,
Mhm.
I'm wondering what is the best way? We have a bunch of working groups. They are all very action oriented. They do report back to this main committee, and from here, Sarah is attending our CPA meetings.
Mhm.
But what is the best way for our different working groups to be interacting with the RCPA? Should it go through Sarah? Should people be reaching out directly to you if they have questions? Kind of, how would you like to work with us?
Either way, certainly you're welcome to reach out directly to us. I mean, as you saw, we have a very small team, so we may not be able to respond immediately or address all of your questions, but we definitely would really appreciate hearing what you're working on, because the more we understand what you're doing and the challenges you're facing, you're not the only ones who are facing those. So it really is helpful for us too, in terms of understanding where we need to prioritize our resources and our focus. So, feel free to reach out, excuse me, directly to me. And if we need to change that in the future, we certainly can. But that would be, I think, a great place to start.
Great, thank you so much. All right, well, I don't see anybody waving their hands to say, please don't move on the agenda. Zeno is waving his hand. Zeno, do we have public comment on this agenda item before we move on?
Well, I want to really encourage people to measure what happens, and I'm not sure that we do. Sonoma County doesn't have industry really to speak of, so a lot of our emissions are embedded in our consumption. We are a wealthy county, we consume a lot, and when we import our consumption, there is significant climate consequence of that. We also have a tourist industry, and so we have a tourist board who is very active and successful in encouraging people to visit us. Are we responsible for these people who fly to Sonoma County in terms of their greenhouse gases? In a way, we are, because of what we do, that they come here. And so are we encouraging travel? Would these people have gone somewhere else otherwise? These are complicated issues, but we cannot just deny that they're there. So I really want to us to go back to measure. Are we measuring everything that we feel we have influence on, but we certainly have on the tourist traffic, or that we feel responsible for in some other way? Are we measuring what needs to be measured? Because we can feel that we kind of zero carbon, but if we forget about a significant portion of our carbon, we're kind of fooling ourselves.
Yeah, thank you. We do have the CAP and metrics committee that is working on defining exactly these questions. So it's always good to have that input. Anyone else like to be recognized before we move on to our next agenda item? All right, so I'm going to hand this over to you, Lisa.
I'm going to have to head out. Thank you very much for the
Thank
opportunity.
you so much for coming,
And I'll
Tanya.
send those slides. Yep, thank you. Bye-bye.
All right. Let's see. There was a draft of a letter that I wrote that I guess Alan had sent out for. I think you were asking me, Kenna, if I could briefly say what Title 24 is. Yeah. So Title 24 is our state energy code for new construction. And basically it requires all new buildings to be energy efficient with insulation and glass and lighting and all sorts of things. And every 3 years the code is updated. And we are very close to adopting what will become the 2022 update for Title 24. And this is a big deal because what they are strongly considering doing is making the all-electric reach code there's various versions of all electric reach codes, but this would be a pretty good one for the whole state of California. Up until now, it's been a city by city effort to pass these all electric reach codes in cities. But so this is something a lot of individuals and groups and cities have signed on to written letters to the California Energy Commission in support of doing this. So the all electric reach code, you know, it's basically discouraging gas appliances and heating and all of that in favor of all electric technology. So I don't know if should I read the letter or what should I do with that?
I think it would be great for you to read the letter quickly.
Okay. So this is just one possibility. We may decide we don't want to send it to the council. People might have suggestions for how it might be improved. I just kind of wanted to get the ball rolling with something. So this is a draft of possible letter from the city of Sebastopol to the California Energy Commission. And then there's the address and the all that. And then on behalf of the city of Sebastopol, this is theoretically from the mayor now. I thank you for the opportunity to comment on the California Energy Commission's 2022 Building Energy Efficiency Standards. We encourage the CEC to transition to a 2022 building code that is aligned with the state's climate targets. Adopting an all-electric building code for both residential and commercial construction will utilize the state's increasingly carbon-free electricity resources. Building energy stakeholders need a clear signal from the state to move towards all-electric construction. Sebastopol recognizes that continued expansion of natural gas infrastructure moves us farther away from our climate goals and will create the need for costly future retrofits. In support of California's climate goals, the state has set in motion a number of policy initiatives focused on decarbonizing the electricity and transportation sectors. As California's energy supply becomes increasingly carbon-free, natural gas is responsible for a larger percentage of emissions from building energy use. The combustion of natural gas in residential and commercial buildings comprises a large percentage of community-wide emissions in many California jurisdictions. The city of Sebastopol is committed to addressing climate change by reducing greenhouse gas emissions. Therefore, we encourage the CEC to adopt an all-electric building code in 2022, signed Mayor.
So I want to be really mindful of the fact that we are, our first presentation was really useful, but it went well over the allotted time. So I would like to see if we have enough people that would like to just move this forward, and if someone wants, go ahead, Alan.
All right, before that, I was thinking it may be helpful if we have a conversation with the building official on this, since this falls kind of within somewhat of their territory, and getting their opinion on it before we vote to take it to the city council.
Okay, so what would the process look like for that?
What I would ask is essentially at the next meeting, we bring this item up again, we can have a vote on it, and I'll also kind of have the building officials kind of 2 cents on it.
That seems great. I see 3 hands up. I'm not sure what order they went up in. I think maybe Diana's was first, but I'm not sure. So I'm going to recognize Diana first.
Sure, thank you. We haven't yet had our reports out from subcommittees, but this raises an equity question for me. We look at this all electric, the concept of all electric codes. And one of the things that we've been discussing in that subcommittee on equity is the implications for job opportunities for those who are dependent on carbon-based industries. So I think what I'd urge out of this is that we consider this letter and that we get a little more information through the planning department and through perhaps some discussion, this could be an opportunity for us all to look at the various implications from our various subcommittees of actions that we might take, not just the equity perspective. So that would be my suggestion. Now, what I don't know, and maybe Lisa or someone else can give us an impression about what the timeline is. You know, there may be a real press to get this done, in which case we would need to take that into consideration. Thanks.
Lisa, do you want to comment to the timeline question?
Sure, yeah, we are on a very tight timeline with this. It's going to be done soon. If this update does not include this, we have to wait 3 more years. So it's going to be 2025 before this would be enabled to be possible. So as far as equity, this is for new construction only. It's actually less expensive to just put in electric by far than to add gas to new construction. So we're talking about making it more affordable for the buildings, more affordable to build.
All right, Jerry? You're muted.
Yeah, I know I am. You know that one of the things I did when I moved into this house was to make it energy efficient. And I wanted to make it all electric because I was aware of the impact of gas. Title 24, the way it's currently stated, made it so that I couldn't make it all electric. And I actually wrote to the state saying, hey, you need to change the code. In Title 24, actually, I sent in my documentation with the experts in Santa Rosa to find out how well I did, and make sure I had all the documentation required by the city for the building department. I was 30% more efficient than the 2020 stipulation, but I had specified an electric water heater, on-demand water heater, and I was replacing a gas water heater. Title 24 doesn't let you do that. So Title 24 says if you had a gas water heater, you have to put in a gas water heater again. Now you can put in a heat pump, but you can't put in an electric on-demand water heater. Right? And you can't have an on-demand heat pump because it just simply can't transfer heat fast enough. So I think the letter is necessary, and I think sending the letter in doesn't do anything about equity. I think what it does is it sends a message saying we want to get to all electric. It's stated correctly that the direction that we need to go is all electric. Jane Long said that in 2010 when she reported to Sacramento what needed to happen in the state in order to satisfy our requirements, that we needed to get to all electric. I don't see a problem with sending this letter forward saying we should be promoting that.
Woody?
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, when I read, I just really want to offer an affirmation that we send the letter. When I read it earlier, it struck me how similar it is to the letter that the Climate Center has already sent in, basically, you know, supporting this move. I guess I also just want to say that, you know, so in the work I do at the Climate Center, a lot of that is in the statewide coalition type stuff, and the environmental justice excuse me, groups are there, and I do not recall that this revision is an environmental justice issue or equity issue. I'll check and just make sure on that. But there are some equity issues around existing, but that doesn't have anything to do with this. So I think we're okay. We'd be okay on that score. So really just wanted to offer the affirmation that we should move forward and send a letter, or recommend that the city send a letter support that revision.
Lisa, I have a question for you about the timeline. So is waiting for the director's input and voting on this next meeting make it a moot point, or is that a reasonable course of action?
You know, that's a really good question, Kenna. I'm not sure. I don't know the answer. I can look into it and find out. But I think if there's any doubts from the city, I think it's best to, you know, make sure that it's not done sloppily and hastily, and people might be not happy with it. So that's.
Let's let Alan think to that, because he and Diane are strategizing in the chat.
Yeah. So what we could do, and sorry, Diane, if you wanted to go first.
No, you go.
Okay.
And
So
me.
what we maybe just do is, if we do want to vote on it today, I can try to talk to the building official in between, and assuming that he has no conflict of interest or no, you know, outright concerns, you know, we could probably, if he does have concerns, then it could go one of two ways. I can, you know, in a staff report for this letter, we can say, you know, the Climate Action Committee is supportive of this. However, the building official did, you know, identify X, Y, and Z as concerns. So that's kind of a way that I could see that we can still, you know, take an action today. And, you know, as part of the motion, it could be, you know, if the building official or any city staff has explicit concerns regarding this, that it returns back to the Climate Action Committee with those concerns to discuss, or we move forward with it and we just, you know, identify the pros and the cons in the staff report.
Great. Thank you, Alan. So we have Diana and then Sarah and then Jerry.
Yeah, just really quickly, just to remind you all, this is a committee recommendation. So the city council ultimately has to make the decision. So I wouldn't, honestly, if you feel pressed to make the decision today, that is your right to do that. And then you need to rely on the process to sort out whether there are any issues. The ultimate decision is the city council's. So.
Sarah?
Well, and that's what I was going to mention as well. So we have to consider timing here and the timeline. This week, the agenda is already prepared and finalized. The packets are on their way to out. This is Wednesday, all right? The next meeting after that, full. So if we want to put something on the council agenda that's going to be a presentation from this committee and a discussion item, you've got to consider there's kind of like a 3-week lag at least to get on an agenda, and it could be more like 5 weeks.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Jerry?
So I wouldn't hesitate.
I was just about to say exactly the same thing, having been on now 3 different commissions, you know, about 12 years worth of them. There's never been a time that something came forward to a commission where staff didn't do a report and then show all of the elements that go along with it, and then the commission decides. And that's the way it should be done. So we don't have to be 100% right on every aspect. We have to be right on all of the aspects that we're concerned for. And our concerns are climate action. So I think it's the right place to go.
And for any item to move forward to the council, it's going to have that departmental review and sign off. So if the building inspector were to have some problems, that's also a moment when that building inspector is going to insert them into the staff report.
Fire might even say something.
All right. Would anyone like to make a motion regarding moving this forward?
Lisa should make the motion.
You should, Lisa.
Oh, how do I do that? I make a motion that we move ahead and recommend from this committee that the city examine this possibility of recommending the CEC adopt the all-electric reach as part of Title 24 for their 2022 revisions. How's that?
And I'd like to second that, and we'll send the recommended letter to the city as part of our recommendation.
All right, shall we have a vote? Everyone in favor of this motion that Lisa has made? Thank you for your work, Lisa. Raise your hand.
Lisa, you can vote too. All right, so 11 to, does anyone vote against this? Does anyone abstain? All right, so it's 11 to 0-0.
All right, thank you so much for your work on that, Lisa. Any public comment on this agenda item before we move on?
You're supposed to do that before the vote, by the way.
No, I was. See, I'm learning every day. All right, Diana, were you trying to say something?
Well, the public is really concerned about existing buildings. How are we going to deal with that? Although it's related to the latter, so the public being a little confused is allowed to talk in this way. Maybe when you sell a house, you have to do some upgrades, like a heat pump. Maybe we don't go all electric with the selling of a house, but we're thinking about moving this, because how many new buildings are made in Sebastopol? Maybe 2% a year, 5% a year. So it will take us forever to get electrification just in this manner. We need to think about existing infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, moving on to our CAP. I think we're going to have to table our CAP update discussion again, because I think we need to move, unfortunately. But I think we need to get our working group reports. So I would like to prioritize our remaining 23 minutes for working group reports, unless someone has a very strong objection to that. All right, so we're going to move on to agenda item number 5, working group reports. And I'm just going to go through them in the order that I have them written down here. So Lisa, are you reporting on funding, or is someone else reporting on the funding group? You're muted.
Sorry about that. Woody, did you want to do the funding report, or did we didn't really figure that out, did we? I'm sorry.
We didn't figure that out, so maybe we can kind of do it a little bit together. We did meet, and we met. I'm trying to find what the date was that we met. Sometime last week, I think it was. Oh, it was Monday, March 1st. We met, and Steve Pierce joined us, and it was me, you, Steve.
That's it.
That was it. Yeah. And so we did. We talked a lot about in the beginning, before we started just talking about funding mechanisms, we talked about, you know, the need for that checklist, that screen of equity, that any kind of funding mechanism that we identify is not regressive or impactful in any way, you know, deleterious to underserved communities, disadvantaged communities, that kind of thing, vulnerable populations, whatever. So yeah, I mean, so you want to add something? I'm probably missing something important.
Yeah, there was some there's some stuff we've been kind of cooking up about various mechanisms, like if somebody's selling their house, the transfer tax. There's various things that we're trying to figure out if there's any way that we can get some money for climate stuff. So anyway, I know we're pressed for time, but we were also looking at the fact that Sebastopol has a ban on smart meters, and all of the incentives presently for converting to all electric stuff require smart meters. So we've sort of shot ourselves in the foot that way. But anyway, that's a topic for another day. I think that was about it.
And I'll just add that we did start some sort of Google Docs and things, and pitching in some resources and websites and links and whatnot of various other, you know, examples of funding models and that kind of thing. So we started that whole process of really doing research.
Yeah, we're raring to go.
Do you mind if I give a couple quick updates kind of related?
Sorry.
Yeah. So Ken actually brought up the smart meters to me the other day, and I talked to Carrie about it, and we're going to be doing some research kind of on the history on the, I think there's a moratorium, and looking into that. I don't want to dive too deep into it because it's just very surface level at this moment, but she's going to be assisting us with that and trying to talk to other departments and help us with that history and what options are available.
Oh, that's wonderful news. Thank you.
Well,
Thank
the
you,
fact
Alan.
is, in town, if anyone wants a smart meter, all they have to do is ask for one. There isn't an all-out
Well,
ban.
I don't want to get into the smart meter discussion
Sorry,
right now.
that's not true, Sarah. You can talk to me later about that.
Not true at all.
We're not talking about smart meters right now. That's just a rabbit hole that we could go down. And
3
I would like
hours later.
Luke to report out about the research working group, please.
No report at this time. Thank you.
Alex, what have you guys gotten up to with education outreach, or was Alex going to be the report out on that?
Oh,
You're muted, Alex.
Oh, okay. No, I will be reporting out here. We made a lot of good progress. We're meeting in the alternative weeks as of right now that we have this meeting. We just had a brainstorm for our meeting, and so we came up with like these general buckets of kind of areas where we could make an impact in Sonoma County. I'm sorry, in Sebastopol. One ways we could get out to the community. So those buckets being like paper outreach, and there's a couple different ideas. There's a couple different ways we can get paper out to people, whether that be through the water bill or other ideas like that. Eventually, obviously, when there's events again and tabling, we could still do some tabling right now, like the farmers market, but that was another idea where we could just be out and about with outreaching to people, giving them educational pieces about what they can be doing, just like we talked about with the REACH code, but specifically what they can be doing in their houses to, make those, more environmentally friendly upgrades. We also talked about kind of an idea to create either incorporating a walking tour and having it be like climate focused, or specifically creating like a self-guided walking tour for the city, kind of creating this element around like agro-tourism or like eco-tourism, just kind of trying to figure out ways we can kind of incorporate that element within the city. Also partnering with other groups in the county, looking at like what Daily Acts is doing and try to just sponsor or promote their whatever they're doing. Cause I feel like Daily Acts is so ahead. They're always doing something that's like, oh yeah, like we want to promote that idea. So just basically, if nothing else, just communicating their resource and what they're doing. Also, we talked a lot about presenting to schools. There's actually groups already doing that. So just connecting with those groups and essentially getting climate change more into the curriculum, whether it's formally or informally, just being able to be accessible and creating kind of teams dedicated to support our education system. Looking at social media and website stuff, just if there's ways we can give people resources to climate related, updates for their house or just educating themselves more about it. Looking at ways we could outreach would be potentially a press release. If we wanted to do like some sort of big campaign about electric REACH code or some specific thing that the group wants to focus on. We could also, and what we realized is we can also be outreaching. So for any of the work that the other climate groups are doing, if there's research or one-pagers or anything that you guys are doing that could be shared with the city that would be helpful for just, regular residents or citizens, we can also help get that information out there. So I think those are kind of ideas for distributing. And I think getting the actual information for what we distribute is still kind of TBD, but just like making sure we know exactly what to get out to people is also one topic that we're still figuring out. But overall, I feel like we had a good momentum, good meeting so far, and we're excited for more.
Great, thank you. Lisa?
Yeah, just one more thing I wanted to add, that Petaluma has their climate commission has a wonderful spot on the city website. It's really stunning. And I was wondering if we were wondering if it might be possible to have sort of more of a spot on the city website where we could have more information that was more, kind of public friendly.
Thank you. All right. So next is the Energy and Microgrids subcommittee. And if working group. And if I'm correct, I'm reporting out on that one. And our main report out is that we are recruiting more members from the community and people with a range of expertise to join us in education and strategizing, with possibly then some outreach to the outreach group to do some more public education initiatives. But first, we are firming up our own knowledge and network to try to make the Energy and Microgrids group kind of reach out into the larger community. All right. Luke, do you have anything on transportation?
No updates on transportation either.
Jerry, the CAP and metrics.
3 of us met and we discussed the CAP. One of the things that came out, and we sent out an outline of the organization or the flow of what we'll actually do. And it starts, I'll just give you the main categories. I was going to share this, but I'll just send it to Alan instead and people can look at it. But we'll start also with education. That is, how are people writing CAPs? I was quiet through the whole Rcpa discussion. Other counties are actually doing it differently. It's not that they didn't do it at a county level. The county's not that important in a lot of the other Bay Area counties. The cities are important. The county is so small as far as population and impact that it would be silly to have the county coordinate. They don't have as much staff either. And so the cities are actually doing that. And there's a lot of examples that we could look at. So we wanted to outline what we have so far. And if Kenyon did it, then I understand why it's written the way it's written. And then there's other examples that use a goal, policy, and action format for the CAP as well, so that the city council has something that actually uses a working document for making decisions. As part of that, the education first about CAPs, the second part is education about needs, and that would be actually a customer needs assessment. And in that case, once we have an idea what's going on, we want to meet with both the city council and the planning commission, because those are the 2 major customers of the CAP, and find out what is it that they're looking for, what will they rely on, as well as staff. And then plan out the CAP revision, lay out the major goals and perhaps the policies, then meet again with the customers and say, okay, this is what we have so far. Then put together the action plans that go along with that, and then present that off to the council and planning commission. And then later that would be adopted by the council. So that's the basic flow for the work that we'll be doing. But the first part, which takes several weeks, will just be education and outline, understanding what format we want to have. And Kenna asked one of the big questions, which is supported by Zeno as well. Do we design the CAP based on supply, or do we design the CAP based on demand? And the explanation of what that means is, are we looking at the GHG footprints of those who consume or those who supply? And the only way I can give you the example on that one is China versus the US. And China is the largest GHG producer in the world. The US is second. Now, the reason that China is the largest is we consume the stuff that China produces. So who is it that's creating the GHGs, us or them? And that's the same issue we have here, being a support framework for West County, as well as tourists. Did I get everything? Okay.
Thank you, Jerry. I'm not sure who is going to be are reporting out for sequestration because Joshua was the lead on that topic. So is anybody from that group prepared to report out? I don't see anyone jumping up and down. Yeah,
Sorry.
go ahead.
Okay. Well, Sonali and I are here. We met with Josh on sequestration, and we talked about a lot of brainstorming ideas, and I guess what we left with our action was looking into kind of like a community assessment of what was already happening and going on with sequestration. And we kind of went with trees, and I guess separately, Joshua and I had both asked Sarah Gurney about the history of the tree plantings with the city and the Laguna. And we have this giant group, thanks to Sarah, now linked through email, and we're going to get some information on the history of the trees in the city and the Laguna. Since trees are large and they sequester a lot of carbon, we're starting there.
Sounds good. Sarah, did you have your hand up?
I do, thank you. And I'll put the hand down. Several different people asked me about tree planting, and that's why I went to the resource at the Laguna Foundation, and the new ED has just been in place with COVID. So she went to her staff, Wendy and Brent, and they have offered to give a tour, a walking tour of their efforts in the Laguna. And I was wondering, I mean, that's just an opportunity that has popped up through this subgroup and question development. And I don't know if other people in this group would like to do that, but it's been offered to us. A walking tour of the Laguna. I'm imagining that it might include from their headquarters on Sanford Road to up north to Irwin Creek, which is just the next property, all the way down to the terrace.
I'm gonna, yeah, just.
I can ask an email.
Yeah, I think we can like have the sequestration group set that up and then just invite the rest of us once it's scheduled. Sonali, was there something you were wanting to add?
Oh yeah, I just wanted to add two things. We were going to investigate further what the sequestration guidelines or recommendations were in drawdown. And also, as Tanya mentioned, we had discussed doing education for all the residents on what they can do in their own homes and yards, as well as Dina had mentioned larger land swaths, like 1 acre and plus parcels, like looking at those through a slightly different lens. So those were just adjuncts to
Thank you. All right, Woody, you're back in time. No. We've got your report out here at the very end on social equity, and that's our last working group report out.
Okay, and I'm watching the clock, so I'll try to be quick here. So just a reminder, this is the Social Equity Task Force. It's me, Kenna, and Diana met last March 3rd. We're set to meet again on March 17th, and this is the committee or task force that is meant to be sort of temporary to come up with sort of equity checklist that all of the working groups will run that we will all run through programs through a sort of screen of principles. So we met. One of the things we talked about, though, that I think has some bearing on all of us is that, when this committee was formed, there were openings for 11 to 13 seats, and they had these designations for them. And one of them was for an EJ equity seat, and that one was never filled. And so we agreed that is a first piece of action that this Social Equity Task Force should embark on, which is that this kind of thing, to identify a person like that, usually you have to do some special outreach. So we want to sort of reopen that availability. So we've got a draft letter that can go with some application material, sort of reopen the application. It's not that we need a larger committee. We've got a good number of people on the committee, but the opening or the estimated size was 11 to 13. I think we have 11, something like that. Anyway, so we do need one more person. You know, it could have come in handy earlier in this meeting when we were looking around the room and questioning about the EJ relationship to the reach code, all electric reach code. Anyway, so that was one thing. And we have started the drafting sort of our framework for putting in a statement of principles, a checklist, and a set of resources all in one-stop shopping, one document. So we've started that process to be able to fill that in, and also with the research and whatnot. So we'll be sharing some materials on the first part soon, and then on the second part, I think we're aiming for the next meeting to have some drafts.
Great,
Check.
thank you. Thank you. All working groups did an amazing job of presenting succinctly. So we have 3 minutes left. I want to make sure that if we get any public comment on these working on this agenda item, I'd ask you to keep it very brief. Is there any member of the public that would like to comment on the working group report outs? Okay.
Remember, I forgot 2 little pieces really quick. We also talked about the geographic scope of the committee. You know, is this Sebastopol, and or are there things that we can do that can help the community, the vulnerable communities around Sebastopol? We talked a bit about that. And then a need to define what the vulnerable communities are in Sebastopol. So I didn't want to miss those 2 things.
Thank you. Yes, Luke.
I would just move at this point in the interest of time to skip item 6 and direct members of the committee to express input on the items for the next agenda to Kenna. And also just remind that we have to get anything that goes into the agenda to Alan by Thursday at noon. So if there are any minutes or anything from working groups, information that would be helpful to be sent out to the committee, to just have that in by then. So if there's no objection, seeing none, I'll move on to the review of action items. So all I have down is for Alan actually to circulate the presentation as it comes in from Tanya, and also to send over the approved letter to the building official. Are there any action items to add?
No.
Well, I'd like to ask one question. We don't have an answer on something since it's now clear that we're a committee that is a standing committee. Is anybody working on term limits or terms? Not term limits, terms.
I think Alan can give us that as in the next 1 minute as his report out, and then we will adjourn.
Okay, so I'm going to kind of, there's a handful of things, but I'm going to try to go through them quickly. So one, we have slightly updated the Climate Action Subcommittee, the Climate Action Committee webpage, and there is a document library in there now. So if you do want something added to that, please feel free to forward it to me, and I'll try to have it uploaded the Thursday of that week, and just kind of showing you what it looks like. It's nothing too big, but once we add, so all the subcommittees are actually in there, but nothing shows up until we have something associated with it. So I'll be doing my best to keep that updated regularly. Next, I want to kind of touch on volunteers. So if we do have regular volunteers with a subcommittee, we do need them to sign a waiver form. So if we do have anyone that wants to be an active member of a subcommittee but doesn't want to be part of the committee itself, the Climate Action Committee, we need them to sign that form. So the next thing I want to touch on is the opening the committee to fill the vacant seats mentioned. I think Woody mentioned that. So the next committee meeting, this is something that we'd have to vote on to reopen this. And what we'd be voting on is essentially taking this back to the city council to reopen it, to have it re-advertised. And then segueing that into Jerry's comment, when we take that to council, it'd be a good time as well to bring up the term limits. So one thing I'd like to talk to Kenna, Luke, and Joshua about is just kind of putting these on the next agenda. So a discussion on, the committee's opinion on term limits. Do we want these to be 1-year terms, 2-year, 1.5, 3 years, or what's the committee's feedback on that? And then we can take that to city council along with the reopening of the vacant positions. So that's something we can discuss out of the next meeting once it's agendized. All right. And the other thing I do want to just touch on, and this is more just an FYI to the committee, is that we have received a preliminary application for essentially a rebuilding of the gas station on the east side of town by the Laguna, the Chevron station. So we did receive this recently, and it's a preliminary application, so no actions are being taken on it. But if the city is interested in like the gas station, ban or moratorium, this is something that we should probably work on sooner than later and maybe discuss at an upcoming meeting. So I believe that concludes my department reports. And I see 2 hands raised. Diana, would you like to make questions or comments?
Yeah, just quickly in terms of filling the position, if we want to fill that open positions, any applications will have to be funneled through the city council for city council interviews. So just keep that in mind in terms of our process. We'll have to make sure that it gets agendized and that the city council does those interviews.
And in the meantime, what a good option is, if anyone knows anyone who is a environmental justice specialist or knows this topic, they can always join as a volunteer with the subcommittee. So that's another alternative. That's another possibility. And sorry, do you have anything to add to that or questions?
Jerry, did you have a question?
Yeah, one point about the volunteers, that was volunteers for the subcommittees and would be part of the committee. They're part of the working teams. Yes. But a question, that gas station's inside the city limits?
It is. It is actually at the cusp of the city limit.
Boy, it's really close, isn't it, that?
All right, so thank you all so much for your time today. I'm sorry we are 3 minutes over. It is always my intention to get us out of here on time, so I am going to adjourn this meeting so that you can get off to your dinner.
Thanks,
Kenna. Okay. Thank you all. Thanks, Kenna. Bye.
Yeah. Do you mind staying on just a couple minutes after?
Me or Diana? Who do? I can't hear
you. Can I just, before I hop off, I'll leave in a moment. Alan, can you send me anything you have on that gas station?
Yeah, I can write it over to you. But as I mentioned, it's just kind of a preliminary review. So they're essentially testing the waters and seeing what's challenges are presenting them.
If there's anything you can send me that's, that you're able to send me, that would be great.
Yeah, I can send it to you. It's all public records. So
good. Okay. Thanks so much. Yep. Appreciate it. Adios. Good job, Kenna.
And I think Alex may have left just a little early.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just wanted to kind of bring up those agenda items.
Waiting room now. Did you do that?
Oh, sorry, what?
Did you send Alex to the waiting room?
Yeah, I did.
Okay. Okay. Just making sure I don't need to admit him back.
Yeah, no, it's all good.
Thank you so much for your help. Oh my gosh.
And yeah, we're doing our research on like the smart meters, so we'll hopefully have something to report back.
I don't even think it's gonna make it on next agenda because we just keep tabling the cap and the term limits and new members, and I think the group is going to want to discuss a purchase towards the gas station. So if smart meters, we need the information, but we can't do everything. So
so yeah, it's in the queue for that one.
Right.
As I mentioned, the gas station, it's a preliminary application, and what I can also let them know, I think we're meeting the 25th, and it's just an internal meeting with the applicant and the city to discuss challenges with the project. That'll be a day after the Climate Action Committee. The Climate Action Committee is serious about, prohibition or kind of following Petaluma's footsteps. I can let them know that as an FYI, they are looking at this. There's a possible moratorium on the horizon.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know whether, a tear down rebuild,
so
how, it's not a new gas station, right?
Essentially, it would be a new gas station.
So are they expanding?
So it's kind of a two-part. The reason behind their desire to rebuild it, or it's really to flood-proof the building and the tanks and everything, and make it more flood resistant because of the associated costs with rebuilding the flood damages. So that's the core of it. But then, you know, it's expanding the store. It's adding like the Aztec grill that you see at like Chevron stations. It's really just overall it's a tear down, rebuild, and expanding the existing site. They are interested in adding, you know, EV chargers, but the reality is it's in a floodplain, so it may be difficult to achieve that. So essentially that's kind of what we're meeting at that is what that pre-app meeting is about, is just kind of going over those challenges and is this even feasible, or is this something that they should just walk away from?
Yeah. So do you think is it at a stage where, you know, because I know everybody gets gas station. So does it make sense for climate committee to take that up next meeting, or does it not even kind of rise to that level yet?
So I would say if the Climate Action Committee is interested in a prohibition or a moratorium or temporary moratorium on gas stations, I think it's something that should be discussed.
Okay.
The direction should be made at that meeting. And
Okay.
you know, regardless of how soon it takes us to get a draft or whatever it may be to the city council, we can at least let the applicant know that, essentially put them on watch that this is something that's happening, the city is interested in it. You know, the city council may not accept it, they may make amendments to it, but it's something for them to be aware of. Because
so they're not going to dig up their tanks and replace them or anything like that.
they are. So it's scrapping everything and just rebuilding it.
Oh, wow. Would that increase the safety factor? Like, does that make it more flood resistant? You know, does it make what we currently have a gas station there? Would it make that current gas station a safer gas station?
That's the intention of the plan. So the end of the day, they want to flood proof everything to make sure that if a flood ever does happen again, you know, chemicals aren't leaking into the laguna, the building isn't getting damaged. Essentially just wanted to save money in future costs. It's also to make everything safer. Plus, you know, spillover or toxins being released when something does happen.
Right.
So it's an interesting.
Yeah, it's not a straightforward, kind of like bad thing.
Yeah, and it's interesting because I remember when I was working in Santa Fe, I had a handful of gas station projects, and I was amazed at the level of investment in this day and age in gas stations, like $3+ million projects for retrofitting a gas station, which in my head in 20 years, electric fuel cell cars are going to be the norm.
Yeah.
But they're doing what they got to do. So
yeah,
it's allowed by the city. It's allowed by the city. So that's where I guess the challenge comes in. So
all right. Well, I will put that on the agenda. Is there anything else that I should be aware of?
I really think that's it. So we discussed the volunteers. Just they need to sign waivers if they're going to be a volunteer member of the subcommittees. And to reopen the committee, essentially we just have to have a vote on it, just saying that we want to reopen it and try to get, you know, the missing members. And then we'll take it up to city council.
Great.
So that's what I got.
Thank you.
And good job leading it. I know it's not an easy thing to do, but